Those allegations coming from a member of his office, Lieutenant Quatisha Epps, who described him as a predator and demanded sex from her and other favors since he was elevated to chief of department.
When you talk about my work speaks for itself. Driving down crime as the chief of department, all right? What I've done out there in the communities, what I've done in Brooklyn North, all right? I have given so much to the city. So much, and I've never asked anyone for anything in return.
Okay, so we just finished wrapping up a video talking about Jeffrey Maddrey and his lawyer defending their stance that the situation with Lieutenant Epps was consensual. But now the New York Post came out with an article that is extremely bad for Jeffrey Maddrey, exposing his inner circle of female officers and their outrageous overtime payouts. Multiple officers, apart from Epps, also raking in outrageous overtime payouts. One officer pulled in $163,000. Multiple officers hitting hundreds of thousands of dollars of overtime. It's creating a lot of questions. Are these numbers even real? How does this even get approved? Did Jeffrey Maddrey exchange booty calls for overtime during his tenure as the NYPD top cop? This is an entire web of favoritism, ethical lapse, and leadership decisions that make you question everything about the NYPD top brass. While this doesn't scream predator, well, not yet, it definitely raises questions about some shady priorities and the ripple effects that are shaking this department at its core. So let's get into it. The fact that multiple female officers close to Maddrey are raking in exorbitant overtime payouts is no longer look like a coincidence. It looks like a glaring pattern. So take Detective Ingrid Sanders, for instance, who reportedly served as Maddrey's driver. Her overtime haul of $163,414 last year vaulted her to the 7th highest paid officer in the department. That's a lot of overtime. For instance, her total salary ballooned over $350,000, a figure that rivals CEOs of mid-sized companies. If this doesn't raise red flags, what will? The fact that Sanders was both a detective and Maddrey's driver raises some additional questions about the allocation of such extraordinary overtime hours. Are we seriously supposed to believe that a driver acquired that much overtime? What kind of driving is this person doing? NASCAR wraps around the precinct? This reeks of mismanagement at best and blatant favoritism at worst. Maybe this driver was doing some Uber on the side. It's the only way these numbers make any sense. Maddrey's defenders might argue that these payouts were legitimate, but even the most staunchest loyalists would have a hard time explaining away all of these glaring issues. What the hell is happening? Now, another part of this article that I thought was fascinating is about some kind of apartment arrangement. One of the more bizarre aspects of this unfolding saga, Epps claims Maddrey directed her to help another favorite officer, Ida Reyes, to secure housing. This wasn't a casual advice or a helpful nudge. Apparently, it involved renting an apartment under Epps' children's names so Reyes and her family could live there. How does this remotely fit into Maddrey's role as the chief of department? Well, because it probably doesn't. This is more than just the office fling as Maddrey suggested.
What happened here?
Me and Lieutenant Epps, we worked together starting in early 2022. We were working together for about a year and a half, and we were working together. One thing led to another. We had an office fling, and that's all it was an office fling.
Consensual relationship, you're saying?
Absolutely consensual.
How long did that last?
We had got together a couple of times. It was really nothing to it. There was no romance. We weren't girlfriend and boyfriend. We had an office fling, and that's all it was.
I don't believe you anymore.
This just seems messy. Seems like this person had relationships with multiple people. This guy was all over the place. This level of interference in personal housing matters reveals how Maddrey blurred professional boundaries to get some booty. Whether it's harassment, favoritism, or just simply poor judgment, these actions show a leader whose priorities were highly questionable, to say the least. Epps also revealed that a part of her overtime pay went towards buying household items for Reyes. Towels, microwaves, and other necessities paid for by Epps under Maddrey's directive. While this detail may seem small, it seems like it's a microcosm of a broader issue. Maddrey appears to have used his authority to blur the lines between personal favors and professional obligations. Every towel and microwave purchase represents a small yet insignificant misuse of power, and definitely misuse of taxpayer money. Are these people actually doing overtime? If Maddrey was willing to cross the lines of something as mundane as Walmart purchases, it begs the question, what other ethical corners was he cutting? So when you look at the bigger picture, it's hard not to see a pattern. Epps, Sanders, Reyes, These aren't isolated incidents. They're part of a consistent pattern where Marjorie's closest female colleagues appear to receive extraordinary benefits, whether it's a form of inflated overtime, housing assistance, or sex. This situation just embarrasses the NYPD. What about integrity? There isn't any. When the leader is perceived to be playing favorites, it just creates that toxic culture where merit takes a backseat to personal connections. It's a betrayal of public trust, plain and simple. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. Is Marjorie a predator? The evidence so far doesn't support that conclusion. The swinger claims, the consensual relationship defense, and the lack of concrete proof of being forced all point to a very messy story. But let's be clear, just because Marjorie may not be a predator does not mean he's off the hook. While this situation reveals a different kind of abuse, one rooted in power and favoritism rather than outright being a predator, Marjorie's action shows a leader who prioritizes his personal network over the department's integrity. Whether it's manipulating overtime approvals, arranged housing, or other questionable practices, Marjorie's behavior is far from acceptable. Is this a systemic issue in the NYPD? Sounds like it is. It's indicative of a broader issue in this department. How did these overtime abuses go unchecked for so long? Where were the safeguards to prevent this kind of thing to happen? To prevent this kind of blatant favoritism? Marjorie didn't operate in a vacuum. The system enabled him. This scandal should serve as a wake-up call for NYPD to implement some stricter oversight and accountability measures. If leaders like Marjorie can manipulate the system so easily, what does that say about the department's internal checks and balances? Well, if you already noticed, they fired a guy that was heading the internal affairs, so there was no checks and balances.
Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch is continuing to make staffing changes within the NYPD. This comes just 1 week since former NYPD Chief of Department Jeffrey Madry resigned amid sexual misconduct allegations.
Commissioner Jessica Tisch is cleaning house. She has ousted NYPD bosses. We're talking about the chief and now deputy chief of internal affairs. Now, Fox 5 has learned that the PC has made recent personnel changes in internal affairs and also in former Chief of Department Jeffrey Madry's office. Internal Affairs Deputy Chris Morello has been removed from his post. 6 members of Madry's office, 5 detectives and 1 police officer were sent to walk the beat in public housing. This all comes following the sexual misconduct allegations surrounding the former Chief of Department Jeffrey Madry. His subordinate, Lieutenant Quatisha Epps, filed a complaint against the city last week claiming she did unwanted sexual favors for Madry in exchange for overtime.
So Epps' allegations of harassment remain contentious, but the timing raises a lot of concerns. It raised a lot of eyebrows, coming only after her overtime pay was exposed. So are we going to see more evidence coming from her about abuse? We'll see. Because, however, these new revelations about Marjorie's favoritism complicate the narrative. While Lieutenant Epps' claims may lack some credibility at this point, her accusations still shine light on Marjorie's unethical practices. Unfortunately for Jeffrey Madry, maybe the decades of him doing positive in the community doesn't really help in this situation. Right now, as NYPD's top cop, he had the opportunity to lead with integrity and set an example for the entire department. Instead, he chose to get booty, providing favoritism, leaving a legacy tarnished by this scandal. So we'll see exactly what is going to happen to him. Madry may not be a predator, but he's far from the leader New York City deserved. As investigations continue, one thing is clear: the NYPD must do better. And I'm sure a lot of people do agree about that. Well, let me know what you guys think about the latest information coming down about the situation. Let me know, put in the comments below. Thank you for taking time to watch this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video.